The moment Nathaniel's voice cracked over the secure line, Elliot knew this wasn't just another translation job. What he heard next would unravel the CEO's entire world and drag his own buried truths screaming into the daylight. Elliot Harper sat frozen in the soundproof booth of the downtown Manhattan Conference Center, headphones clamped tight, fingers hovering above the keyboard. The assignment had come in at midnight. Urgent, confidential, triple the usual rate. Simultaneous interpretation for a private family arbitration, the email had said. No names, no details, only the promise of a non-disclosure agreement thicker than the Manhattan Yellow Pages. He had accepted without hesitation. Rent in Brooklyn was due, and his last relationship had left him with nothing but a broken lease and a vow to stay professionally invisible. Now, at 2:17 p.m., on a humid Tuesday in June, he was translating for Nathaniel Harrington, the 35-year-old founder of Harrington Dynamics, whose tech empire had just gone public at $3 billion. The client sat across the polished walnut table from his father, Reginald Harrington III, a silver-haired oil baron flown in from Houston. Between them stood a stone-faced lawyer and a court reporter whose pen never stopped moving. Elliot's job was to render every word into flawless Spanish for the elder Harrington's wife, Isabella, who had joined via video from Madrid and spoke no English. But the real conversation had shifted the instant the lawyer left the room for a bathroom break. "Father, I'm done pretending," Nathaniel said, voice low and raw. "I'm gay. I have always been gay. And if you force this merger marriage with the Lancaster girl, I will walk away from everything. Company, inheritance, the family name." Elliot's breath caught. He translated automatically, muscle memory carrying him through the Spanish. But his mind reeled. The words weren't meant for him. They were private, explosive, never supposed to leave the room. Yet here he was, the invisible conduit, suddenly holding the most dangerous secret in New York City. Isabella's face on the screen paled. Reginald slammed a fist on the table. "You will not destroy 3 generations of legacy because of some phase." Nathaniel's jaw tightened, green eyes flashing with a pain Elliot recognized too well. The meeting dragged on for another 40 minutes of accusations and counter-accusations, but Elliot barely heard the rest. When the session ended, Nathaniel rose, buttoned his charcoal suit jacket, and looked straight at the booth's one-way glass as if he could see Elliot sitting there. "Mr. Harper," he said into the microphone, voice steady now, "I'd like to speak with you privately." Elliot's hands shook as he removed the headphones. He stepped into the conference room, the door clicking shut behind him like a judge's gavel. Nathaniel stood alone, the afternoon sun slicing through the floor-to-ceiling windows and painting gold across his sharp cheekbones. Up close he was taller than the photos suggested, 6'3" of quiet power, but right now he looked exhausted. "You heard everything," Nathaniel stated, not a question. Elliot nodded once. "I'm bound by the NDA. Nothing leaves this room." Nathaniel studied him for a long moment, something unreadable flickering behind those eyes. "Good, because this isn't over. My father will be back tomorrow, and I need someone I can trust to translate the next round. Will you stay?" Elliot should have said no. He should have walked out, taken the check, and forgotten the name Harrington. Instead he heard himself answer, "Yes, sir. I'll stay." Nathaniel's shoulders relaxed a fraction. "Call me Nathaniel. And Elliot, thank you." The CEO turned toward the door, pausing just long enough to add, "You're the first person outside my family who knows. I hope that doesn't scare you." It did. But not for the reason Nathaniel thought. What scared Elliot was how quickly the man's quiet vulnerability had cracked open a door inside his own chest he had nailed shut years ago. That night Elliot paced his tiny Williamsburg apartment, the city lights blinking through the fire escape bars. He replayed the confession again and again. He had spent 28 years learning to be invisible, good grades, perfect Spanish from his Peruvian mother, flawless English from his Boston father, and a sexuality he kept locked behind polite smiles and weekend trips to safer cities. His last boyfriend, Marcus, had left after Elliot refused to introduce him to his parents. "I can't keep being your secret," Marcus had said. Now Elliot was guarding someone else's secret, and the weight felt strangely familiar. He opened his laptop and searched Nathaniel Harrington. Headlines praised the visionary CEO. Tabloids speculated about the eligible bachelor, who never dated publicly. No one suspected. No one knew. The next morning Elliot arrived at the office early. Nathaniel was already there, sleeves rolled up, coffee in hand. "I owe you an explanation," he said without preamble. "My father built an empire on image. Gay son doesn't fit the brochure. He thinks if I marry Cecilia Lancaster, the merger with Lancaster Energy will seal the dynasty. I let him believe the lie for years because it was easier than the fight. But last month I met someone briefly. It ended badly, and I realized I can't keep living half a life." Elliot listened, translating the pain between the lines. "You don't have to tell me any of this," he said softly. Nathaniel smiled, small and tired. "I know. But you're here now. Might as well be honest with the one person who can't run away screaming." They spent the next hour prepping for round 2 with Reginald. Nathaniel's Spanish was decent but not courtroom ready, so Elliot walked him through phrasing, tone, cultural nuance. For the first time in years Elliot felt useful beyond words, seen, needed. The second meeting exploded exactly as Nathaniel predicted. Reginald arrived with a prenup the size of a phone book and an ultimatum. Marry Cecilia or be cut off. Isabella cried on the screen. Nathaniel stood firm, voice never wavering as Elliot translated every brutal syllable. When the elder Harrington stormed out, Nathaniel turned to Elliot. "Lunch? My treat. Consider it hazard pay." They walked to a quiet Italian place on Park Avenue where the maitre d' greeted Nathaniel by name. Over pasta and red wine Nathaniel asked questions: where Elliot grew up, why he became an interpreter, whether he had anyone waiting at home. Elliot answered carefully, leaving out the parts that would reveal too much. Yet each answer seemed to pull another thread loose. By the time espresso arrived, Nathaniel was laughing at Elliot's story about translating for a temperamental opera singer in Miami. The sound of that laugh did dangerous things to Elliot's resolve. Back at the office, Nathaniel's assistant handed him a sealed envelope. Inside was a check for double the agreed fee and a note in neat handwriting. "For discretion and for listening. N." Elliot stared at the note long after the building emptied. He should deposit the money and move on. Instead, he found himself texting the only friend who knew his secret. I think I'm in trouble. Met a guy today. He's complicated." Lucas replied instantly. "Complicated how? Married? Straight? Boss?" Elliot typed back one word. "All 3, minus the married part." The reply was a string of skull emojis. Elliot closed the phone and leaned against the cool marble wall. He had promised himself after Marcus he would never fall for someone still hiding. Yet here he was, already counting the hours until tomorrow's session. The third meeting never happened. Reginald Harrington canceled with a terse email citing urgent business in Texas. Nathaniel read it aloud in the conference room, then crumpled the paper and tossed it into the recycling bin with surprising force. "He's regrouping," he said. "That means I have maybe 2 weeks before he tries something else. Buyout, lawsuit, who knows?" Elliot watched the man's shoulders tense under the tailored shirt. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Nathaniel turned, eyes searching. "Honestly, company. And maybe advice from someone who's actually figured out how to live authentically." Elliot laughed despite himself. "I'm not exactly a poster child for that." "You're here," Nathaniel countered. "That counts." They spent the afternoon walking the High Line, the elevated park stretching above the city like a green ribbon. Tourists snapped photos, but Nathaniel kept his sunglasses on and his voice low. He talked about college, the secret boyfriend he had lost when his father found out, the years of therapy and denial. Elliot shared pieces of his own story, the coming out at 19 that had cost him Christmas dinners, the mother who still prayed for him every Sunday, the father who sent birthday cards but never asked about his life. The sun dipped low, painting the Hudson gold, and for the first time Elliot felt the ache of loneliness ease. When they reached the end of the path, Nathaniel stopped. "I'd like to see you again. Not as client and contractor. As friends. Is that okay?" Elliot's heart slammed against his ribs. "Yeah," he said. "That's okay." The weeks that followed blurred into a rhythm Elliot had never known. Breakfast meetings at a tiny cafe in Tribeca where Nathaniel ordered avocado toast and Elliot teased him about it. Late-night texts about nothing and everything. A Saturday baseball game at Citi Field where they sat in the owner's box and argued about stats like old friends. Nathaniel never pushed, never asked for more than Elliot offered, and that respect felt like oxygen after years of suffocating caution. But the secret still hovered. Elliot caught himself glancing over his shoulder in restaurants, deleting texts before bed, measuring every word. One evening Nathaniel noticed. They were on the rooftop of Nathaniel's penthouse in Chelsea, city lights glittering below. "You're scared," Nathaniel said quietly. "Of me, of what this could become," Elliot admitted. "I've been the secret before. It hurts too much." Nathaniel set his wine glass down. "Then let's not be secrets. Not from each other. The rest of the world can wait." He reached across the small table and brushed his thumb over Elliot's knuckles once. A promise rather than a demand. Elliot didn't pull away. The trouble started on a rainy Thursday. Elliot had just finished a deposition downtown when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "Mr. Harper, this is Reginald Harrington. I understand you've been spending a great deal of time with my son." Elliot's stomach dropped. "I'm his interpreter, sir." A dry chuckle. "We both know that's no longer accurate. I have photos, Mr. Harper. Rooftop dinners. Baseball games. My son has always had poor judgment when it comes to companions. I'm prepared to make it worth your while to disappear quietly. Name your price." Elliot hung up without answering, heart hammering. He stared at the rain streaking the taxi window and felt the old familiar shame rise like bile. When he reached Nathaniel's building, the doorman handed him a key card. "Mr. Harrington said to let you up any time." Nathaniel opened the door before Elliot could knock. One look at his face and Nathaniel pulled him inside. "He called you. It wasn't a question." Elliot nodded, words failing. Nathaniel's expression hardened. "He's been having me followed. I should have known." He poured 2 glasses of scotch, handed one to Elliot. "I won't let him do this to you. To us." The word us hung in the air like a lifeline. Elliot took a burning sip. "What if walking away is the kinder choice? For both of us?" Nathaniel stepped closer, close enough that Elliot could smell his cologne. Sandalwood and rain. "I've spent my whole life walking away from what I want. I'm done. If you are too, say the word and I'll step back. But if there's even a chance you feel what I feel," Elliot set the glass down and closed the distance. Their first kiss tasted like scotch and relief and the terrifying possibility of hope. When they pulled apart, Nathaniel rested his forehead against Elliot's. "We'll figure this out. Together." The next morning the headlines hit. Harrington heir spotted with mystery man. Is the eligible bachelor off the market? Grainy photos from the rooftop. Elliot scrolled through them in bed. Nathaniel's arm draped across his waist. "We're out," Nathaniel said calmly. "No more hiding." Elliot waited for panic, but it never came. Instead he felt something new, pride. He turned to the man beside him. "Then let's do this right. Dinner with my parents next week." Nathaniel smiled. "Only if I can bring dessert. I make a mean tiramisu." The laughter that followed felt like the first real breath Elliot had taken in years. Reginald Harrington did not go quietly. The first blow came in the form of a lawsuit, breach of fiduciary duty, claiming Nathaniel had used company resources for personal indiscretions. The second was a press release from the Family Foundation announcing the immediate removal of Nathaniel's name from all charitable boards. By Friday, the stock had dipped 3%. Nathaniel's legal team worked around the clock, but the real damage was personal. Isabella called from Madrid, voice trembling. Mijo, your father is hurting. Please, for the family. Nathaniel ended the call gently but firmly. Elliot watched from the kitchen island, chopping vegetables for the dinner they had planned before the world tilted. You don't have to do this alone, he said. Nathaniel crossed the room and kissed the top of his head. I'm not. They hosted their first joint dinner that night, Lucas and his partner, plus 2 of Nathaniel's college friends who had always suspected but never asked. The penthouse filled with laughter and the smell of roasted chicken. For 3 hours, the outside world disappeared. When the guests left, Nathaniel pulled Elliot onto the couch. Thank you, he whispered, for reminding me what real life feels like. Elliot traced the line of Nathaniel's jaw. You've been reminding me the same thing. They fell asleep tangled together, city humming below, and for the first time Elliot dreamed of a future instead of running. Monday brought the next escalation. Reginald flew back to New York and demanded a face-to-face meeting. No lawyers, no translators. Nathaniel agreed on one condition. Elliot would be present, not as interpreter but as partner. The elder Harrington arrived at the penthouse at precisely 10 a.m., face carved from granite. He looked at Elliot once, dismissed him with a glance, and turned to his son. This ends today. Sign the papers, Mary Cecilia, and I'll make the lawsuit disappear. Refuse, and I will destroy everything you've built. Nathaniel didn't flinch. Then destroy it. I've already lost the only thing that ever mattered, your respect. But I won't lose myself again. Reginald's eyes flicked to Elliot. And this is worth throwing away billions? Nathaniel reached for Elliot's hand. He's worth everything. The door closed behind Reginald with a finality that echoed. Nathaniel exhaled shakily. That felt good. Elliot squeezed his hand. It looked terrifying. They spent the afternoon on the balcony planning damage control, press statements, investor calls, a quiet wedding if it came to that. Nathaniel laughed at the idea. We've known each other 6 weeks, and I'm already proposing in hypotheticals. Elliot grinned. Slow down, Harrington. I still haven't tasted your tiramisu. Later that evening, while Nathaniel cooked, Elliot's mother called. Mijo, I saw the pictures. Is it true? Elliot braced for the usual sigh, the careful change of subject. Instead she said, he looks kind. Bring him to dinner next Sunday. Your father already set an extra plate. Tears stung Elliot's eyes. Really? We're trying, Elliot. We love you. When he hung up, Nathaniel was watching from the kitchen doorway. Good news. Elliot crossed the room and kissed him fiercely. The best. The lawsuit dragged into August. Court dates loomed. Nathaniel's board grew restless. One night Elliot found him on the rooftop staring at the skyline, shoulders tight. Talk to me, Elliot said. Nathaniel turned. What if I lose the company? What if all I have left is this? He gestured between them. Elliot stepped into his arms. Then we'll build something new. Together. I didn't fall in love with the CEO. I fell in love with the man who chooses courage over comfort. Nathaniel's kiss was desperate and grateful and full of every unsaid promise. They made love that night with the windows open to the summer breeze, slow and reverent, every touch a declaration. Afterward, Nathaniel traced circles on Elliot's back. I used to think happiness was a luxury I couldn't afford. You proved me wrong. The turning point came at the preliminary hearing. Reginald's lawyers presented evidence of moral turpitude, expecting shock. Instead, Nathaniel stood in open court and said, I am gay. I am in love. And if that makes me unfit to lead, then I will step down. But I will not apologize for who I am. The judge called a recess. Cameras flashed. By evening, the stock had rebounded 6%. Investors tweeted support. Reginald sat stone-faced in the gallery. But when Nathaniel passed him on the way out, the older man gave the smallest nod. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. Enough for now. Fall arrived in a blaze of color. Nathaniel sold a minority stake in the company to a progressive investor group, keeping control but shedding the pressure of his father's shadow. Elliot's interpreting work slowed as he took on a new role, consultant for Harrington Dynamics International Expansion, translating not just words but cultures. They moved into a brownstone in Park Slope together, filling it with books and plants and Sunday morning pancakes. Life felt almost normal. Almost. The first crack appeared during Thanksgiving. Elliot's parents drove up from Boston. Nathaniel cooked a feast that could have fed a small nation. Everything went smoothly until dessert when Elliot's father cleared his throat. "So, Nathaniel, what are your long-term plans for my son?" The room stilled. Nathaniel met the older man's eyes. "To build a life where he never has to hide again. To marry him one day if he'll have me. To be the kind of partner he deserves." Elliot's mother dabbed her eyes. His father nodded once. "Good answer." Later, helping with dishes, Elliot's mother pulled him aside. "He loves you the way your father loves me. Hold on to that." Elliot hugged her tight, the last pieces of childhood fear dissolving. Christmas brought Reginald to the brownstone, uninvited but not unwelcome. He arrived with a bottle of 30-year scotch and a small wrapped box. Inside was a framed photo of Nathaniel at age 10, holding a little league trophy, smiling the same crooked smile he still wore. "I was wrong," Reginald said gruffly. "About a lot of things. I'm not asking for forgiveness today. Just room to try." Nathaniel hugged his father for the first time in years. Elliot watched from the kitchen, heart full. That night they all sat around the tree, trading stories, the fire crackling. Elliot caught Nathaniel's eye across the room and mouthed, "Thank you." Nathaniel mouthed back, "Always." New Year's Eve they hosted a small party on the rooftop. Fireworks exploded over the harbor as the clock struck midnight. Nathaniel pulled Elliot close. "Marry me," he whispered against his ear. "Not because the world is watching. Because I can't imagine another year without you as my husband." Elliot laughed through happy tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They kissed as the city celebrated below, confetti and cheers and the promise of forever. Spring brought wedding planning and the quiet joy of choosing flowers and vows. Elliot's Spanish-speaking relatives flew in from Lima. Nathaniel's mother arrived with stories of her own youthful rebellion. The ceremony was set for June in a private garden in the Hamptons. Intimate, sunlit, perfect. 2 weeks before the date, Elliot received a letter postmarked Houston. Inside was a single sheet in Reginald's handwriting. "I was wrong about you too. Welcome to the family, son." Elliot showed it to Nathaniel that night. They cried together, the last shadow finally lifting. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Elliot stood in front of the mirror adjusting his navy suit, heart racing with a joy so large it felt like it might split him open. Lucas fussed with his boutonniere. "You look like a man who finally stopped running." Elliot smiled. "I stopped the day I met him." Downstairs Nathaniel waited under a white oak tree strung with fairy lights, his mother on one side, Reginald on the other. When Elliot appeared, Nathaniel's face transformed. Relief, love, wonder all at once. They exchanged vows under a canopy of roses, voices steady despite the tears. "I choose you," Nathaniel said. "Every single day, in every version of myself." Elliot answered, "And I choose you, your courage, your heart, the man who taught me it's safe to be seen." Rings slid on. The kiss that followed tasted like sunlight and salt and every hard one tomorrow. The reception spilled across the lawn. Music played, laughter rose, and at one point Reginald pulled Elliot aside. "I almost lost my son because I was afraid of what people would say. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." Elliot hugged the man who had once tried to buy him off. "We're family now. That's all that matters." Later, under strings of lanterns, Nathaniel and Elliot danced their first dance as husbands. Nathaniel whispered, "Best translation job you ever took?" Elliot laughed. "The only one that mattered." They honeymooned in Santorini, days blurring into sun-drenched bliss. One evening on a cliffside terrace Nathaniel handed Elliot a small velvet box. Inside was a silver key. I bought the house next to your parents in Boston. Figured we could use a place to visit when we need family and when we need quiet. Elliot kissed him until they were both breathless. You keep surprising me. Good, Nathaniel replied. I plan on doing that for the next 50 years. Back in New York, life settled into a rhythm of work, weekend brunches, and quiet nights on the couch. Elliot published his first article, The Power of Being Heard, about the invisible labor of interpreters and the unexpected friendships that sometimes bloomed in silence. Nathaniel read the draft and teared up. This is us, he said. The article went viral in industry circles. Offers poured in. Elliot turned most down, preferring to stay close to the company and the life they had built. One ordinary Tuesday, Elliot came home to find Nathaniel cooking again. Tiramisu, of course. What's the occasion? He asked. Nathaniel turned off the stove. I sold another chunk of the company. Took a board seat at an LGBTQ youth center instead. Figured it was time to give back what we almost lost. Elliot pulled him close. You're incredible. We're incredible, Nathaniel corrected. They ate dessert on the balcony, watching the sun set over the brownstones, and Elliot realized happiness wasn't a destination. It was this. The man beside him, the city humming below, the future stretching wide open. Summer returned, bringing their first anniversary. They spent it at the same Italian restaurant where their first lunch had happened, now a tradition. Over candlelight, Nathaniel raised his glass. To the interpreter who heard more than words, Elliot clinked his. To the CEO who taught me how to speak my truth. They walked home hand in hand, the streets alive with the energy that had once terrified Elliot, but now felt like home. At the brownstone door, Nathaniel paused. I have one more surprise. Inside, the living room had been transformed. Photos of their journey lined the walls, from that first shocked Booth moment to the wedding kiss. In the center stood a small frame holding the original NDA contract, now stamped with a single red word. Fulfilled. Elliot laughed through happy tears. You kept that. Of course, Nathaniel said. It brought me you. They danced in the living room to no music, just the sound of their breathing and the distant city. Later, lying in bed with the windows open to the summer night, Nathaniel traced lazy patterns on Elliot's chest. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't hired you that day? Elliot thought for a moment. I would still be translating other people's stories instead of living my own. You changed everything. Nathaniel kissed him softly. We changed everything. Months turned into years. They adopted a rescue dog named Whisper. Fitting, Nathaniel joked. They traveled to Peru to meet Elliot's extended family and to Houston for Reginald's 70th birthday, where the old man proudly introduced them as my sons. Elliot's parents visited often, bringing Boston accents and endless stories. The youth center thrived under Nathaniel's guidance, and Elliot's speaking career took off with TED Talks on authenticity and belonging. Life wasn't perfect. Arguments happened, work stress came, family tensions flared, but they faced every challenge together, choosing each other again and again. On their 5th anniversary, they returned to the cliffside in Santorini. Standing in the same spot, Nathaniel pulled a small envelope from his pocket. Inside was a handwritten note. True or false? Love is worth every risk, every secret revealed, every bridge burned. Elliot smiled, tears catching the Greek sunlight. He took Nathaniel's hand and answered without hesitation. True. Always true. And in that moment, under a sky painted gold and rose, 2 men who had once hidden from the world stood unafraid. Proof that the bravest translation of all is turning fear into forever.